now that the conversation is going so very well, I apologize for interrupting you, but I just want to say a few words and then certainly let you go on to your interesting conversations. But I want to welcome you all to the launch of the new IISS Defense and Military Analysis Program on the day that we released the 2011 edition of the IISS flagship publication, The Military Balance. The first military balance in 1959 was barely 16 pages in length. And over the years it grew and became, during the Cold War, the standard reference tool to understand the East-West military balance in both conventional and nuclear dimensions. And every sentence and word was pored over by people on both sides of the NATO-Warsaw Pact divide, and some of my predecessors would sometimes get letters of complaint, either if their armed forces were not sufficiently explained, or if people were exaggerating capacities of their own countries. And the book grew over time to include assessments of military power really throughout the world. And this issue of the military balance that we launched today is just under 500 pages in length and assesses the military capabilities and defense economics of some 170 countries. And while the military balance has always provided the most authoritative statement of the quantity of military holdings, increasingly we wanted to add more nuanced qualitative assessments of military capabilities. And so it was that in the last year we've engaged in a wholesale renewal of our in-house expertise on military issues and appointed really top analysts with world-class expertise, recent military experience, substantial knowledge of military operations, and real awareness of the defense industry to create this newly established defense and military analysis program at the IISS. And because it's a defense and military analysis program, it of course has an acronym, so forever now it will be known as DMAP. And the key personnel in this new DMAP program are Dr. Tim Huxley, the director of the Defense and Military Analysis Program, James Hackett, our editor of the Military Balance, Brigadier Ben Barry, the Senior Fellow for Land Warfare, Doug Barry, our Senior Fellow for Military Aerospace, Christian Lemire, Research Fellow for Naval Forces and Maritime Security, Henry Boyd, our Research Assistant, and we'll be adding a defense economist to this group and further staff potentially also in our regional offices in Asia, the Middle East, and North America as the program develops. And the DMAP team will be examining the qualitative components of military power: doctrine, training, interoperability, jointness, and other features that allow militaries to have real effect on the ground and in the air. And already their knowledge has been put to very good use at this year's military balance, but next year we will see even more dramatic improvements in our analysis as a result of their work. That analysis, produced by the DMAP team and blended with our other regional and specialist expertise, will not just be provided for the military balance publication, but across our research activity. So the best recent piece on the Chinese J-20 you will read in Strategic Comments. Appreciations of the challenges to establish a no-fly zone in Libya you can read in IISS Voices. Assessments of cyber warfare and power and survival, analysis of Iranian advances in its nuclear program in our dossiers, and so on. The new DMAP team, working alongside our regional specialists, will ensure the IISS provides to its members and to all of you and the wider public the best facts and analysis on current and prospective use of organized armed force. And in time, we hope to have a relational electronic database of all of our military information, including information that we gather for the military balance and we can't fit in the confines of the book. And that tool we hope to make available in a way that allows all of you and others to make your own reports and analyses. This work on the military balance and by the DMAP will provide the factual and analytical basis on which we, as always, seek to improve the public understanding on military affairs. And it is also an important set of objective information that forms a backdrop for the defense diplomacy that the ISS encourages throughout the world, and in particular through the Manama Dialogue in the Gulf and the Shangri-La Dialogue in Asia, two institutions of defense and security diplomacy that the ISS has been able to create to encourage transparency and hard-headed defense debate between governments. So I commend our new defense and military analysis program to you. I hope you'll spend time tonight meeting some of our staff members as part of that program. I hope that you'll stay in touch on a regular basis. Those of you, when you leave the Institute tonight, will get a good intellectual goodie bag that includes the executive summary of this year's military balance. You can receive the military balance if you're a member. If you're not, you have a membership form to get the military balance. And when we launched it this morning, we saw quite how much interest it generated. We were asked by the press taxing questions on the conflict in Libya, debates at NATO, the place of cyber power in contemporary international affairs, the ambitions of states in Asia and the Middle East to gain greater military power for themselves, and of course, the current campaign in Afghanistan. And against that background, it's therefore a real pleasure to have with us tonight a person who's grappling every hour with many of those issues, Dr. Liam Fox, the Secretary of State for Defense, who came to know the ISS well when he was in opposition. He stays in close touch with us now, as do so many other defense ministers around the world. I'm delighted that he's here with us today. Given the many pressures on your time, Liam, you do us a really signal honor to join us this evening, and I wonder if you might just say a few words as I hand over your complimentary copy of the Military Balance 2011.
Probably have to declare that nowadays. Just like to put that on the record. In opposition, which now seems a very long time ago, the most exciting day of the year for my special advisor was the publication of the Military Balance. Barring a reprint of the Bible itself, it was regarded as the most important printed document in existence. I spoke to one of my colleagues in Europe recently who'd been relatively recently appointed. He said he'd only been there a month, but it felt already like a year. And I had to explain to him that in defense terms, being defense minister is like dog years. 1 year in defense is like 7 years for everybody else, or certainly it seems like that. But this is, of course, one of the most respected and authoritative defense publications anywhere in the world. It is very widely read and hugely respected, and this year's is no exception. The analysis of Afghanistan and policy, of cyber, what is happening in China, all provide very interesting reading. But for me, it's the analysis of the West and its relative decline in terms of defense strength that is the key element of the publication. And the blunt truth is, and it's an unpalatable truth, that the fiscal deficits which have been run up in Western countries by years of profligate spending with little regard to the economic consequences have become strategic liabilities for our countries. And the bottom line, to put it another way, is that you can't be secure if you're broke. Next year, the United Kingdom will spend more on interest on our debt than we spend on the defense budget, the Foreign Office budget, and the international aid budget all combined. We cannot continue on that path because it is now sapping our long-term ability to be able to fund for security if we keep on spending, increasing debt, and therefore the interest on that. Therefore, unpalatable choices have to be made. Getting the deficit down is not simply a matter of good housekeeping. It's, in my view, a matter of long-term national security. And as Britain feels it today, you can bet your bottom dollar that across the Atlantic, the same pressures are going to be felt before long. Because we cannot continue to live off money we do not have, sticking more and more burden onto the next generations. The inevitable consequence is that so much money goes to our creditors that we cannot invest in the programs that we need for our own long-term security. There is a price to be paid for living beyond your means for too long, and very sadly, many of us are having to grapple with that dreadful proposition today. We've had to make very tough decisions here in the United Kingdom. We will still have one of the world's top 5 defence budgets in terms of size, our Future Force 2020 vision. If we get, and I stress if we get, real terms defence spending increases in the years beyond 2015, will leave us at the end of the decade in a much leaner but more effective shape. But that is a decision politically to be taken. Others in Europe, I still believe, will follow, many of them from perilously low defence levels already, many of them, in the vast majority of cases, in fact, below the 2% GDP level that NATO requires them to spend. And big questions need to be asked when defence ministers meet on Thursday and Friday this week about how serious they are about the alliance, how willing they are to commit to the funding of the alliance, and how much political will they have to use the limited assets many of them already have. And there are big questions of credibility for NATO that now need to be faced up to, and faced up to very quickly. There is no point in investing in military assets if you do not have the political will to use them. And it is the combination of investment and willingness to use that is, I think, the real test. I imagine that around the world tonight there are many people flicking through this document, looking for Tunisia, Egypt, Oman, Bahrain, and lots of places that they perhaps didn't have such a focus on in recent times. They will find a treasure of information in these pages, as we did for the difficult years in opposition. And as we enter what I call the war of the invisible enemy, the cyber era, and when people say we are potentially entering a cyber war, waking up people, we're already in a cyber war on a daily basis. When we, in politics, have to convince people that we have to divest ourselves of the capabilities of the past, the very physical capabilities that people like to look at that used to be paraded in Red Square and elsewhere, in order to invest in some of the areas we will require for the future, particularly in the electronic space and in cyber. There is a great deal in the Military Balance 2011 to tell people exactly why that needs to happen and to set out an intellectual rationale as to how we should proceed. Of all the recent years, this is perhaps the most interesting, the most comprehensive, and I think potentially the most influential of all the publications we've seen. John, I wish you and the organisation well in your defence and military analysis programme. I'm not using any more acronyms than absolutely required in life these days, living in the Ministry of Defence. It's like living and speaking Swahili sometimes. But after a year, I'm beginning to get a grasp of it. Thank you very much for asking me this evening. Congratulations on possibly your best military balance yet. Good luck with your programme. If we can help at all, we're willing to do so, and I hope you'll be willing to do the same for us. Thank you very much.